Welcome everyone. This is the first session of the afternoon. First of all, we would like to extend our gratitude to the Marmara Union of Municipalities for this brilliant event. In terms of the content and in terms of the organization and participation, this has been a great event. Now, in this session, we're going to talk about a new area, something that we haven't necessarily discussed before. Actually, in our daily lives, it's not so new, but in academia, in literature, it is quite an unexploited area. New media and the city. New media manifests itself in different ways, and it brings about new devices into our lives. Of course, social media is the most well-known of this. And today's participants are actually people you know from social media and Twitter especially. And now they're on the stage. Usually they're on social media. That's how we know them. But of course there are other media. There's this thing called alternative media, digital media, Medyascope, and similar YouTube channels are quite prominent. Other methods of or means of social media, and also digitalization is another process. Everything is becoming more and more digitalized. Resources and information pertaining to the city, maps are created, and so on and so forth. Animation type production. So in a way, we're all going through this process. And many of this has an impact on our lives and an impact on the cities that we live in. So actually, what is generated is what we should be discussing right now. What source of information is more popular? So this actually causes us to question our link with the city, whether it has an impact on how we perceive the city, our sense of identity, and so on and so forth. So this is what we're going to discuss here today. In Istanbul, Sehir University, City University, we carry out also digitalization efforts. We put on Twitter announcements, tidbits about the city, and no one cares. But when you put a map, an infogram on a given topic, something that's digitalized, when you present it to people in a visual form, you get more retweets. So actually, this is about being more popular, digitalization. But what is the outcome of this trend today and in the future? Especially at a forum of this kind, how should we be discussing this? How should we be tackling this issue? What does it mean today? What will it mean in the future? This should be the basic question. Yes, if you have any questions, we can receive them in the end. You can send them to us on your apps, on your mobile phones. This is a forum. Discussion is key. So this is not a terribly academic discussion. So this is going to be an interaction. We wanted to have 3 rounds. The first round will be dedicated something to introduction. Because if I introduce people, I feel that it could be quite academic, quite biographical. So I am going to ask our panelists to please introduce themselves. This is important because on Twitter, we know about their presence, but they have different professions, and perhaps they can talk about that a little and tell us how they link their professional lives and their social media existence. And then we're going to have a second round and a third round, and then we're going to focus more on discussion. So I'd like to give the word to Cengiz Bey now, if I may. Thank you so much. Thank you for organizing this event, for inviting us, Marmara Union of Municipalities. I'd like to thank them. It is apparent that they had a broad vision when they organized this event. And actually, yesterday, Hatice made an interview upstairs, and I said similar things then. We need to embrace all segments of the society at a forum like this, but sometimes this is not the case, but we have very good participation here, so that's good. It's important to be open to all sorts of ideas, all sorts of convictions. In the first round, allow me to introduce myself. I have been living in Istanbul for the last 52 years, born and raised. I've never left Istanbul, and maybe for a couple of weeks I've been away for a purpose. I always say in my biography that I was born in Süleymaniye in Istanbul, on Marmara Urban. On our website, I put it in my biography. My profile picture is Emirgan's depiction on a dome of an artisan, and I sort of identify with that figure. I feel a certain sense of affinity with that person. Because I attach a great deal of importance to what those people do. I have that affinity, like I said, for that photo. So the person who took that photo, Ali Sai, who is now deceased, I'd like to commemorate his memory. And, I think it's quite important. Well, actually, since 2015, I've been interested in social media. I worked in a state institution as a teacher for 15 years, then I resigned, and that was a wise move. And for the last 5 years, I have been trying to do things on social media. There have been two dimensions of my activities. Kültür Istanbul, my Twitter handle. This is actually has 10 times more followers than 530,000 people follow me on Twitter, and I never expected this to be the case. It has more followers than many municipalities. That's social media, and also digital publishing and culture are two of the areas that I have focused on in my life for the last 5 years. This has been so important for me. But before 2015, actually, none of this had held any sway for me. I wasn't an active social media user before. I only had a blog, and I used to publish essays on that blog, and T24 had just opened at the time, and I had some columns published there, and I was a blog writer, but I didn't have a huge following. And then this transformed into something else over time. Because publishing blog posts became redundant over time, because life gained much more speed and people used social media much more extensively, and Twitter and Instagram are very busy platforms, and people follow the world on these two platforms, and I just wanted to be present at these platforms and share things on the city, on an urban culture, understanding of an urban culture. And in the second round, perhaps I should tell you about how I built on my Twitter account. Thank you.
Kültür İstanbul.
Well, thank you indeed. The name Kültür İstanbul, meaning Culture Istanbul, how did it come about? Maybe you can explain it in the second round. And Seda, the floor is yours now. Microphone, please. Her microphone is off. Microphone, please. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank the Marmara Municipalities Union, and I would like to thank all the participants who are here at this time in the afternoon on a weekday. Even if we had 10 people attending this meeting, I would appreciate it, but now we have a large crowd here. Thank you very much for coming. I am a graduate of Faculty of Architecture of Mimar Sinan University. I am an architect. Our school generally teaches projects on the historic structures, and we are given during our education a lot of information about historic monuments. So a professor, when I was a student, sent me to an archaeological excavation in Urfa. I had the chance to attend that. I had the chance to attend another excavation in Tekirdağ. I worked as an editor in Atlas Journal. I was working at an architectural office as well at that time, so I'm a hyperactive person. I'm interested in many different fields. By the way, my sister is also an archaeologist, but we've never attended any excavations with her. Then when I got graduated, I worked at the Topkapı Palace for a very short period of time, and then I started to work at the Metropolitan Municipality Planning Unit. Then I resigned after the plan was completed. I worked at the Historic Peninsula Planning. I worked at Diyarbakır wall planning inside the wall neighborhood. So I had the chance to get to know 3 different cities surrounded by walls: Istanbul, Diyarbakır, and Edirne also. So at a very early age, I was really lucky to be involved in those projects, because at younger ages, it's better to be involved in these projects when you have no financial expectations. Then I was involved in the restoration of some monuments, including Hagia Sophia, and we have been working on architectural projects. So I've been involved in all aspects of this business: research, planning, archaeological excavations, restoration. I feel like a very lucky person. I always believe that I'm a lucky person. So, by the way, we were warned because the pressure of profit will increase in the cities, they said. And I'm always an optimistic person. At least I try to be resilient. But yes, we have seen an increasing pressure on profit. So I started sharing my experiences on social media. And I was actually responding to the comments that Cengiz has written. He's a very nice person. He's a very decent guy. And you can tell it by his program. And he's not jealous at all. He doesn't envy anyone. He wanted our posts, social media posts, to be visible. So your followers increased, I guess, right? In number? Yes. Well, I always liked to write. At the age of 4, I was able to read and write thanks to my parents. We would read a lot, thousands of books we would read. But having a blog and writing about things is different. If you are a perfectionist, it's not a long-lasting effort, because we are involved in restoration. The monuments board, for instance, when you go for a project application, you have to wait for long hours, and that's when I tweet actually. I can't do anything else, so I need to do something, be active on social media. And I also travel around the world, from Africa to the Balkans. I try to travel as much as possible, Europe as well. So our country has a lot of architectural monuments from the ancient times, even prehistoric times, to the modern times. Above the ground we have different structures, and people are not given anything. Okay, somebody has to stop me, otherwise I'll keep on talking, so maybe you can continue. Okay, as an introduction, I can say this. So Mr. Cengiz increased the number of our followers thanks to his comments. Now I have about 80,000 followers, and people are still interested. They're not unfollowing me. Microphone, please. Microphone. Okay, can you hear me now? Yes, at Marmara University in 2002, I started my undergraduate studies. In 2018, I completed my studies. Now I'm having my PhD at Istanbul University, Sociology Department. Hopefully I will finish that very soon as well. In 2009, I moved to Barcelona for work, and that's the beginning of the whole story. I had a lot of free time there, and my friend Baybars Külebi, we were reading books a lot with him, and I was recording the sessions. Then we had an online radio that we were using at that time. We said, let's broadcast that through it. So all the collections that we have read were also broadcast alive through programs. People who reached out to us, we were able to make sure that they listened to the programs. And in 2014, I came back to Istanbul. I wanted to further develop this and to see how we can further expand the outreach of these posts. At that time, there was Twitter and Periscope, so we came up with the idea to develop it through that. And Cengiz, by the way, he's my cousin. We used to go to his painting workshop when I was living in Istanbul and have conversations. So we started to talk about how we can make it more visible. And in August 2015, we started the Periscope broadcasts. We have about 147 programs so far, and on Twitter we have programs about cities. And when you live in a different city for 5.5 years, when you leave the country and come back, you have a different perspective actually. So I was able to make comments and share posts on the city itself. Currently we are trying to continue the program to the extent possible. So this is my story briefly. Thank you. Hatice. Hello everyone, welcome. First of all our speakers thank the Marmara Municipalities Union, and I would like to, as the coordinator of communication coordinator and media and communication coordinator of this forum, I would like to thank you. Thanks to you and your contribution, we were able to bring such a rich content. As Marmara municipalities union, we have a lot of missions, but maybe most important one is to make sure that the information about the city is shared with the stakeholders. We want to disseminate this, and such forums, symposia and conferences are organized for that, and we also have cultural publications. We have books, journals. For instance, The City and Society is one of the journals that contains academic articles. So information about the city is generated by many different stakeholders. We try to reach out to them in a way that would be interesting for all of the stakeholders. Apart from that, I don't have as many followers as you do. I'm here just representing my institution. And in my presentation, I'll talk about the concept of urban journalism and the relation of it with new city life. Hello, welcome. I think I'm the only one who's not living in Istanbul, not even in Turkey. I've been living in Ukraine for the last 7 years, and the reason why I'm here is that I think they invited me because of the content that I produce on social media. I lived in Istanbul for 12 years before I moved to Kiev, and I started as a blogger. I was taking pictures and I started traveling, and the more I traveled, the more pictures I took. And after a while, you don't feel satisfied by sharing these pictures on photography websites only, but I started to write travel articles, but not standard ones. I prepared maps. I tried to stay away from regular information, but I wanted to, for instance, focus on the primary schools of the Ottoman era in Istanbul. Then I started to produce content, create content about Istanbul. I don't know if we will see the slides reflected, but I was interested in the old Istanbul photos, especially on Facebook groups. We have some colleagues, by the way. We worked a lot on them, but Facebook didn't allow us to archive this. So under eskiistanbul.net, I had to work on the archive all by myself. I didn't receive any support. I mean, technical support, I mean. But of course, Istanbul wasn't enough for me. Then I started to work on the archives of the entire country, Turkey, because I was traveling around the country a lot. So we have eskiturkiye.net. We have about 4,000 pictures there. And on the Istanbul archive, we have about 7,000. Yes, we still have a lot of missing photos. We don't know the total number of pictures, but this is the best I can do as an individual. I attach importance to mapping. I use it on my blog and on my website. I also created kültürenvanteri.com. The maps that I have previously prepared on Google, I'm sharing them. Like the ancient cities in Turkey, you can see them. Some titles are particularly important for me. The fountains of Istanbul, for instance, I have marked on the map about 1,000 fountains. Otherwise, the standard information can be found on encyclopedia, but I don't have the time to give that much detailed information, generic information. What is your profession, by the way? I'm an industrial engineer. I'm not born in Istanbul, and I lived in Istanbul for a short period of time only. Yes, I've been following you since last year. You post such nice things. And then I also learned you also have some friends, some volunteers supporting you. So he has an engineering background. Yes, there are some advantages of engineering. You can easily manage the websites in a fast way. Sometimes there are friends supporting the website, and they have to take a lot of time, but as I'm an engineer, I can do it in a faster way. That's an advantage. So I'm more familiar with the software skills. So we have, in summary, 4 different active websites about the history of Istanbul and Turkey. Okay, we'll get the details in the second round. By the way, if you have any questions to our speakers, feel free to post them through the app so that we will have an interactive discussion. In the second round, I will ask our speakers what they do. We have Kültür Istanbul, or the digital publication, Twitter accounts. What are you sharing? What are you posting? What is your priority? What types of things are you posting? Is there a specific focus? Or what kind of reactions do you get? These are the things that I would like to ask you. And at the end, what is it good for? What's the use, let's say? For municipalities, for local administrations, is there any benefit for people? Is there anything that they could use in their everyday lives? So I would like to ask you to assess your efforts from that perspective. Let's start with Kültür Istanbul again. What kind of content do you share? And how would you assess your work? Well, maybe it's because of my style, but I use this account totally for sharing information and announcing certain events, especially promoting books. That's the main focus. When I created this account, initially, by the way, I created it in 2015. Twitter was already used a lot during the Gezi events. And social media is over politicized, and inevitably people post a lot of things about politics. I was never involved in that. I just wanted to post information about the urban life, urban culture. That's how I started. And I really saw the benefits of this. There is this dynamism created by the use of everyday language. People respond to that in a positive way, especially in countries like ours, where everyone is willing to live in the borders of their neighborhoods only. The use of negative language would always create a reaction. So I never used that kind of a style. I only shared information. I have some notes here, for instance. I shared the itineraries of Mimar Sinan the architect, and Professor Halil, they also shared the same itinerary like mine, and he also posted mine later on. So this itinerary that I shared, or this the series of tweets were read by 1,400 people, the flood. So at least 20-25 people said they personally used the itinerary and visited all the monuments constructed by Sinan. If I were to publish a book, I'm not even sure if 1,400 people would take the time to read it. So it's a very strong and powerful space. I had another flood giving some recommendations about like things to do in Istanbul before you die. And 1,100,000 people read it. So I gave some recommendations. Don't go there. That's the dangerous place. So it's an interactive thing. social media is not limited to your posts only. There is this shared wisdom that is created there with the comments, and many people contribute to what you write. That's why what Seda is sharing is very important. Having this awareness of architecture and cities, everyone can contribute to one another on digital media or social media, and everyone can learn from one another. So I met an unexpected interest. Well, I wouldn't think that I would become a social media influencer after the age of 50, but maybe it's too late for me. But what's important is when you share information, people respond to it. We have these nostalgic accounts about Istanbul. Oh, Istanbul used to be a great city. Now things are very bad. No, I don't go into that kind of nostalgia. I think we need to live the spirit of our age, and I'm also against the belief that history and past was always better. So we have some accounts on Twitter talking about the past, about history, and they have a lot of followers. But I think we need to live today's spirit as well. If we want to preserve the past, then we need to have some information about it first. So creating this awareness on the city and how local administrations are using this social information. I will have certain things to say about this in the next round. But about this account, maybe a couple of last words. First of all, this field, social media, creates opportunities, and there are also risks. There are 500,000 or 300,000, whatever, observing you. Some people want to make you say certain things, for instance. Or they try to come to some conclusions. I don't like going into that kind of stuff. It's not because that I don't have a political position. But I don't feel the need to shout out to people what my political opinion is. Ahmet Hamdi Tanpınar, the famous author, says, "Our thoughts are with us as long as we live them." So, I want to use this space to disseminate information. I think it's a good opportunity, and people respond to this. They need it. That's why I continue with this style. Negative speech, of course, is seen a lot in social media. A person sees a building with some problems in the restoration. They immediately post it. They start criticizing the local administration, the government, or other institutions, the opposition. They start criticizing everyone. Then you see 300, 500, 1,000 posts are made, and this happens very rapidly. I mean, the figures I'm giving you are not enough to show it. There are sometimes 3 million, 5 million people seeing those posts. But then it's not done on a permanent basis, because negative speech might be used by some people, but a great majority of people don't like it. Like the people on the streets, as the journalists would call them, or the silent masses. We have those silent masses, especially young people who design their entire lives based on social media. They read your tweet, for instance, in the morning when they go to school. Maybe they learn something out of it and they make a weekend program about it to get to know the city. They go to that location that you recommend and then they post it. I think it's very important now. Things are happening very fast in our lives. By the way, I will wrap up. In the past, we had Facebook, then we had blogs, then we had Twitter, then we had Instagram. Now there is something called TikTok. And YouTube publications or videos are now not that popular. Podcasts are more popular now, and we have very good programs available at podcasts. So it's a constant updating. We need to also constantly update ourselves. So in the second round, maybe I'll talk about the role of local administrations in all this change. Yes, thank you so much. So giving the right information is important. Some information that could be instantly used is meaningful, you try to say. Yes, just like your maps. The people will see the map and then they want to go and see the real location or share it with somebody else, so the interaction increases.
Thank you. So let's move on to Seda Hanım. You have an account that's dedicated to also sharing of information. I used to do additions to Bilgili Kültür İstanbul, the gentleman's account, and then you started sharing things on your own, and now you have 80,000 followers, right? Yes. You did have a presentation, if I'm not mistaken. Let me show you. If we could also please turn it on. Yes. Yes. In today's world, architecture has changed. We have 500,000 contractors. These people, in the absence of, these people are contractors. They don't require a diploma to do what they do. And everyone can claim to be, I'm an architect, I do restoration. But a vast majority of people suffer from the fact that some of these things are not done properly. Feeding ourselves and shelter are two of our most basic instincts. We used to live in the caves and we always had to eat. These are the two basic instincts, food and architecture. But right now, we're not employers of architecture. People don't know who their employers are. People are not interested. And people are not interested in architectural concepts. For instance, I'm going to share a couple of things with you. Things that I'm interested in. I don't have an agenda as to what I'm going to write tomorrow. I don't care about that much. If I'm interested in something, the way I learn, and by the way, I make associations, right? Because maybe academics write theses about this, but all of this mainly remains on the shelf. There is restoration, PhD theses that are not translated into day-to-day lives. I'm someone who is interested in this. We do understand one another. There are good architects, but we cannot break this chain of contractors or, employers, assign certain projects to, contractors with the best connections at the municipality. Harpuş'ta, sofa, hayat. I talk about these things, and these are architectural concepts, and people remember their villages, the homes of their grandparents. They add photographs. Someone I know, and I'm very much interested. I don't have much time for etymology, and I share those things. And I share literature, works of literature, like Peyami Safa, for instance, and others. So we share other things like memories, anecdotes, and also people have this thing whereby, let me say that people like, they find out that what they own is of importance. Why do we demolish traditional houses? Because we believe that they're simple. We forget about the philosophy, and no one told us that they are actually precious. I want people to realize that their houses are precious, so that people can appreciate the value of them. This enables people to, understand their environment better, and also learn more about their tradition. This one, for instance, Çöğürten. There is a song, a traditional song about Çöğürten, and now I understand what it means, he says. And then I talk about another traditional song, the word Eyvan. People don't know what that means. And it's no longer in use, but in the past, that was a very important thing. But now our houses are very small. We live in boxes, and our personalities, our genetics, most probably will suffer as a result. So, we don't know about architectural terminology. We cannot envision these things. We cannot demand them. So actually, we live in places that were not prepared for us or by us. I want people to demand sofa. Not a closed-door living room, but like a family room. No one has sofas anymore. You don't have to live in a wooden house. You can have a sofa in a concrete building as well. It's the philosophy that matters. We don't even know the word, what that means in Turkish. We don't know what kapı binisi is, for instance. I quite like ODTÜ as a school of architecture, and I have some interns coming from ODTÜ. I say pah, and they don't know what pah is, because they are taught in English. But this is about being a master and an apprentice, our profession. That's why we need to take ownership of these Turkish concepts. People should maintain the knowledge of these words. Also, pavements, sidewalks. Our municipalities give us nothing. Our mayors give us nothing. Hopefully, after the latest local elections, people's voices are being heard more and more. Mayors do not give anything to the dwellers of the city. We waste our money on low quality material for the payments. Just like Cengiz said, I don't go into politics, but we see all these awful restorations all around us, and I can criticize easily on the internet some poor executions. We have this great heritage of architecture. I want mayors to take ownership of this. In the Ottoman times, we had urban architecture. Now, it's not architects who run cities. You don't find that. People are bogged down by the workload in municipalities, and people go for the contractor that will give them the highest square meter, and we don't look for a good architects. That's why what I want is, we have architects that are capable. Either we're going to sing together or rise above this situation. Of course, I would prefer us to go above. Competitions, transparency, And now on Instagram, on Twitter, there are many agricultural accounts, and I support them unless they copy and paste what I post. I always support these accounts because otherwise they turn it into commercial activity. Otherwise, I try to embrace everyone. So I try to do what Cengiz has done to me, to others. So that's what I'd like to say for the time being. So as far as we can tell, you have a positive agenda to raise awareness about the importance of urban architecture, and as much as you can, you try to raise certain important topics, right? Yes. And your followers also have the opportunity to see what you're worried about. Yes. I've been an architect for the last 20 years, and some of our clients, in Beyoğlu, we executed many projects and we explained the history about these buildings to the proprietors. When you explain it to them, they do not want to knock it down. They want to maintain it, and they are proud of the heritage. So preservation, conservation comes from this. You don't preserve what you do not know. If you don't know what a Turkish house should be like, you wouldn't protect it. Turkish architecture is quite unique, not like Italian architecture. I love Italian architecture, but all of our buildings are unique. None of two are the same. Topography is different. Cities are different, so there are similar buildings, but they all offer something new. So let us not lose that, shall we? Let's conserve as much as possible, both in the cities and in rural areas as well, because right now in Turkey, people are flocking from Istanbul to villages, and I like to share these messages. I know that I post a lot, but I nevertheless do it. So digital publishing and Twitter account, you have that also. So what would you like to say about your activities? Now, I use Twitter quite effectively, but I'm going to mainly focus on culture and arts. So how did we start it? Let me tell you the story, and then I will talk about the city and the relationship with the architecture. After I got back to Istanbul, with Cengiz, we sat down to discuss how to do it on Periscope. We started to use Periscope, and in August 2015, we embarked on this journey. And in a rooftop at the library, I had a mobile phone and an ironing board. That's how we started our emissions. After the second month, Ruşen Çakır, he had just established Medyascope at the time, and he wanted us to feature on his platform, his independent journalism platform. And then we had 7 emissions. After the 8th one, we went to the studio of Medyascope, and this was a huge advantage for us. The 7 or 8 sessions we funded ourselves. It was like a casual chat. But we didn't really know what to do next. We were invited to the studio, and we had the luxury to invite guests. And then we started inviting guests. The first guest was Gürkan Erginli. We talked about Rome with him. And since then, we've had 147 programs as of Monday, somewhere about architecture, somewhere about the city. And here's the situation. As we do this thing, I mean, so with a very small investment, it's not an investment. You can even use your mobile phone to do it. And this is a very symmetric relationship because, I mean, you announce it on Twitter. You can see the statistics. People intervene. It's quite democratic. In conventional media, it is quite asymmetrical between the spectator, the follower, and the content manufacturer. There's a hierarchical structure, and we broke that off. And that's why people are quite interested. People are quite interested in this. And also, this ironing board and the mobile phone thing is quite advantageous because we have the opportunity to set our own agenda by not being influenced by anyone or anything, be it financial or political. We're not censored. In mainstream media, actually, and we don't have any mainstream media now, but in conventional media, let's say, people had to make an income, and that drove people to focus on doing different things, being more popular, and so on and so forth. To be more sensationalist, the mysteries of the Hagia Sophia, the aliens, this and that, because that's what people are interested in. They're interested in such sensationalism. But our own agenda is quite an independent agenda because of the fact that we exercise our own liberty. We have our own agenda that we stick to, and this allows us to be very specific, very niche in our efforts. And of course, the most important factor here is the fact that we are curious. I mean, once the program starts, it's like a domino effect. And we pursue what we're curious about. We gather around a theme without digressing from the topic. We stick to an order, to an agenda. We can be positive, we can be well-rounded in our efforts, and that's how we pick our guests also. Apart from this, in terms of selection of guests, here's what we're careful about. We don't care about the political views of our guests. We care about the fact that they are serious about what they do, that they're an expert in what they do. I mean, we have guests from different political backgrounds, and we've always invited these people, talked to them. We've tried to find the common ground with them. And this is it's like a forum. It's not very didactic, and we don't go into intricacies. We try to have fun. If you watch our programs, you would know that we like to have fun. We try to be as joyful as possible and as fun-loving as possible. So what do we talk about? And as of this week, we've had 147 programs. Thus far, the 2 of which were about immigration from Spain, fires and natural disasters in Istanbul, immigration. Istanbul is a city of immigrants. We've talked about that. We've done this with Cengiz. These first three, we've talked about restoration. Seda was with us. Nur Osmaniye restoration and other restoration projects in Istanbul. Story of the history of the city. We've had 18 programs on the city. Architecture, architectural heritage. We've had several different programs with different prominence on different topics. So we've had many. These programs, do you have viewership numbers? I mean, urbanization, is that a popular topic? Well, I was going to get to that. With Musa Masabancıoğlu, we discussed Pervitici maps, and that proved very popular. That was quite a popular program. So our programs are broadcast live, and we had a program on Jack London. It drew more than 100,000 views, but the average is on Mondays. Because of the Periscope, there's a ban you can't. Periscope is prohibited in Turkey on Mondays because of the football games. So 20,000, 25,000, that's what we achieve. That's the live views. And of course then these are uploaded on YouTube. It's like an archive, basically. For people working in Turkey, for academics working in Turkey and elsewhere, I think this is very important. I mean, people say, "Oh, we didn't know that this was possible," and so on and so forth. That's important. We've had programs on Kanlıca, Istanbul fires. We've talked to Kenan Yıldız. With Ekrem Hoca, we've had a program on daily life in Istanbul with Ahmet Turan Köksal. I wish he were here. We talked about architecture of mosques. So we talk to academics and specialists. And it makes a niche subject much more widely known. In mainstream media or conventional media, you don't see this because it simply does not sell. People are interested perhaps, but because of the capital relationships, you don't see this on mainstream media, but we don't have such worries. I don't like to give numbers that much, but I would be content with one single person watching the program if they're interested. I mean, I don't wish to do this for the thousands. I mean, I don't care about tens of thousands. The fact that it reaches one single person, as long as they're interested in it, is good enough for me. if my program can inspire people, that would for me be the best outcome. So I do not wish to be bogged down by numbers. Yes. About the city, architecture, restoration. There's all these new horizons to be explored. And from that point of view, I think what we do, in terms of what we do, I think I'm really proud of what we do. And I'm really proud of being in touch with people this way.
Devam ettirebiliriz. Çünkü bu
I hope we can continue these efforts because it is a voluntary effort. We started only with a mobile phone app, but now we have Medyascope program. We do this totally on a voluntary basis, and we will continue to have these programs as long as we can. And let me announce, next week we are going to talk about the Beyazıt Square. It's a very, very up-to-date topic. Maybe we can have another program about the Beyazıt Square in the future. Halil Ibrahim, this is a message for you. Okay, don't take care of your business deals from the stage. No, I'm just trying to put some more pressure. So, culture, history, conversations, this is the way they are related to the city. So we're talking about alternative media and independent media. That's very important. It doesn't require a lot of financing. And you're trying to reach out to people you want to, and you're having a conversation in a way. And the main purpose is to make sure that you reach more people. So far at Medyascope, we have been working with them for the last 2-3 years. In terms of editorial issues, they never try to intervene in anything, saying, why are you publishing this? The content, we totally decide on the content with Cengiz. And of course, the topics are chosen based on the speakers, and we choose the speakers based on how specialized they are, how seriously they take these issues. But the reason I'm telling you this is, in mass media, mainstream media, people who can't talk about these things at mainstream media come to us. Yes, that's the importance of alternative media. Thank you. Hatice, you started talking about the local administrations, and city journalism or urban journalism is an important thing. Can I get the pointer, please? Yes, let me talk about urbanization figures first. Because in terms of disseminating information about cities, this is the most important reason why we are talking about it. Currently, more than half of the world population is living in urban areas, and by 2050, this is going to reach more than 2/3. And then, by the end of the century, we will see an urbanization rate of more than 80%, meaning 60% of the world will be living in these places in 2030. 1 person out of every 3 people will be living at least with 500,000 people. That being the case, the stories or news about the cities are no longer only the field of interest for architects or engineers or city planners, but for everyone. We have very good international publications abroad. The Guardian started this cities piece. They generate content about this. Then we have Next City, City Lab, and other publications that I highly recommend you to follow. With Guardian, by the way, I read the Guardian a lot because we also try to see what kind of lessons we can derive from international experience. So I just came across Aydın Büyüktaş's photo and coverage on The Guardian, and I contacted him. We have the Marmara Life magazine published by our institution. We had an interview for that, and we made one of his pictures our cover. Again, in the forum area, we have an exhibition currently that includes photos of Mr. Aydın about cities. And The Guardian also had this in-depth content throughout the week, because all the content we read about the cities in the mainstream media are very brief news clippings. They don't go into the details of the topic, but what The Guardian does is that they ask questions to their viewership. And for instance, they had this Tokyo week, and Tokyo is a huge city. They asked people living in Tokyo what they want to do when they want to escape from the city, and then the responses created a content for them. Again, City Lab. It's a content about the fabric of the seats we use in the mass transportation. It might seem like a minor thing, but these fabrics should first look good, be comfortable, and they shouldn't keep the stain on it. Easy to clean is an important characteristic. So they ask this, what kind of seats do you have? They respond from Barcelona, Scotland, Warsaw, even from Turkey. They send the photo of a metrobus. And there are examples from Turkey as well, 140 journos. I don't know if you've taken the Oriental Express train ever. People are not able to find tickets. All the tickets are sold out. Everyone is so interested, but we have been reading on the media that tickets are sold out, no more available tickets are there, and this itinerary is very good. And so they actually interviewed people who use this train for touristic purposes, for old ladies. So this is like a 17-minute documentary video, and it was viewed by so many people. I think about 700,000 people watched it. Then there was this content about the Esenler station. During the elections, this was also a hot topic because bus stations are extremely important for cities. They had this very impressive content created with the people working there, shop owners, and then Medyascope. They have content about spaces and people. And Cengiz and Ozan's culture and arts conversations program is there. As we have a more information pollution on media like Twitter, people start following people they trust on podcasts, and the new content and information is now gained through these publications, because you don't need to be a publisher, a professional publisher. Ozan Bey talked about the ironing board. Once you have a good flow of content, and once you identify the needs of masses well, it's very easy for you to reach out to large masses. Again, Twitter. I'll give you the example of Saadet Özen from Twitter. Twitter and social media, they are both very important for that purpose. We now have the new urban agenda. What is it? In 2016 at Quito, during Habitat 3 meeting, they talked about this with the participation of heads of states, NGOs, universities, professionals, private sector. And they said for the design and planning of the urban areas, we need a new approach. Gender equality has to be emphasized here. Improving human health and welfare and protection of environment needs to be there, they said. And they signed a joint document. And this document brought along certain questions, because this new urban agenda In order to create awareness about this new urban agenda, media is identified as a key factor by the UN. So what are the most important tools for communication? How are we going to communicate the data? How are we going to inform the communities? And what is the best method to provide information? These were the questions that were asked. So media is actually an answer, but how do we use media? What kind of news are brought to us by the media? Is the media providing us the news that are most read or watched? So media is very important in terms of creating awareness. Of course, the role of the media is to put in a simple language what the public agencies are doing, but this is more than that. The media also can identify what the government is doing at policy level. It has this strong power to do this. So these unheard stories can be conveyed by the media, but to what extent are they doing it? We don't know. But if they can do it, we have the power to change policies. Now let's talk about social media data. I can't read it from here, but I guess we spend about 3 hours a day on social media. And not only Twitter, but the Instagram stories are now very popular. 500 million users are now using these, and the figure is increasing. So in the last quarter of 2018, Twitter announced that they have a daily user number of 126 million people, and this is increasing. So internet in a minute. We see what's happening in 1 minute on the internet. I don't need to go into the details of this. Yes, when we are using the social media, it's not only about liking certain photos or some posts, but do we also have any offline benefits out of this? Is it possible to do it? So local administrations need to do something as well, because social media is not only used by private companies, large entities, but it's also about what the local governments are doing and what the citizens are asking for. We now have it's more than like saying we should now have a page on Twitter. And creative content is also available. For instance, Municipality of Nilüfer had to explain in one tweet that they were actually a municipality page. And then different municipal pages are competing with one another on Twitter to, draw the attention of people, the residents. So there is the element of fun. And when you prepare interesting content, the municipalities that seem to be very serious and bureaucratic institutions can actually engage in a positive dialogue with the people. Kadıköy municipality, for instance, they are very good users of social media. This was Back to the Future movie picture that they tweeted that got a lot of interaction actually. Yes, can you wrap up, please? Okay, let me wrap up. Yes, during disasters, for instance, social media is also coming to the rescue of the municipalities. Last week, for instance, when the earthquake happened, nobody was able to use the GSM operators, but Twitter and WhatsApp were used to communicate. So to reduce this pollution of information, this is also an important media. And social media, yes, it's an opportunity for civil engagement, and there is still a lot of research to be done because technology companies need to share more information with us about how it really impacts democracy and participation. But BOT accounts or buying comments or content that is polarizing or misleading or fake news can be spread quicker than real posts. So people who want to take advantage of this fake news, we also have to pay attention to them. Thank you very much. Yes, we have some more questions, but After Caner's presentation, maybe I will ask you the questions. Yes, Caner. I think you started talking about it. The web pages, the recent ones. Let's continue. Yes, digital media was mentioned by our colleagues. In summary, we can say that digital media is now a platform that gives everyone the opportunity to have media time. But of course, most important thing is negative speech. Can you please show my slides? Yes, the negative impact or negative interactions. The first picture is from the archive of Ali Saim Ülgen. It's the Hacı Beşir Ağa pillar in Ok Meydanı. The second picture, I took it in 2008. But it was put on Twitter on 2014. But the next one, the next picture, I visited the pillar again in 2014 when I came back to Istanbul. I used the same photo. Nobody actually saw that on social media if you look at the number of likes. Then I use these photos to publish or give information about the pillars of Istanbul. See, an anonymous account shared this. There is a lot of retweets and likes. And this photo is taken from my own blog site. They deleted my name and they wrote the date wrong, 2017 it says. And the next one is also like that. And the third photo is published and said it's taken in 2019. So misleading information is spreading in a very nice way. Because people are ready to get angry. They want people to be sad, to be negative. Because if you read these comments, there are even insults. Then a positive example, let me give you. On Twitter, maybe you've seen this. We have a colleague called Berker Kent. He's obsessed about the water scales of Istanbul. I started mapping them. And when I started this, I was able to map about 40 water scales. And the figure in Istanbul Encyclopedia is the same. So I thought I was able to identify all the water scales. Then another colleague who lives in Istanbul, they started to find out and they start increasing the figure. They said, oh, there's another water scale here, there's another water scale there. Then the figure went up to 50. I said, okay, there is no other water scale that is unidentified, but now the current figure is 74. I don't know. All the books and references say that we had only 40, 45 of them, but this is a good example that social media or Twitter can help you get information about historic things. For instance, we have the aqueducts, we have traces of aqueducts inside the forests, so we were able to locate them thanks to the geographical positioning system. We were able to locate them in the middle of the forest, bushes. So this is the benefit of social media. Previously, there was no record of the location of such aqueducts. We weren't able to locate them before. But thanks to social media, we did this. This is a positive thing. But on the other side, only people who are really interested in this are informed. I don't know if the municipalities are doing anything about it. For instance, İSKİ, the Water and Sewage Administration, do they have any maps of the locations of those aqueducts? They don't tell us, I don't know. Of course, we want the municipalities to provide these services. For instance, Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality, the White Desk could be a good example. Thanks to their Twitter account, they are providing positive content if there is a complaint, if people take a picture of a polluted fountain, for instance, they clean it and they take a picture and post it. Are we going to have a second round? No, please say what you want to say now, because we will have a Q&A session afterwards. You can conclude your remarks. Yes, we can continue. Yes, I need to talk about the inventory, but it will take too much time, maybe not. Okay, in a nutshell, I can say that similar inventory work is conducted by the Ministry of Culture as well under their portal, but when you go onto the portal, you can't get access to any information. For instance, a couple of days ago, I read an article about the Turkey's clock towers. They just wrote the names of 11 clock towers in Turkey. That's it. Is that a content really? It doesn't mean anything for me. I know personally that there are more than 50 clock towers in Turkey. There was no information about that. They randomly selected 11 clock towers. They put some pictures that, in a very amateur way. They wrote something like a blog. I mean, this is the Ministry of Culture that we're talking about. They should have better quality content. And so far, I haven't seen a very good quality inventory work in Turkey. That's something we all need. When I travel around Turkey, my biggest assistance is still Google Maps. There is no website that shows me good information. Just an example, the Perge ancient city. I was traveling there. I saw something like Paleastra. I didn't know what it was. The English word was the same. The Turkish word was the same. I didn't know what it was. It was a wrestling area, apparently, in ancient Greek time. Okay, thank you. I think I'll just stop here. There is a question for you. Let me refer that to you. Do I need to click on this to show it on the screen? Yes, a question for you about ICT, Internet and Communication Technologies. Now they are as important as water, drinking water, or other services. So do the cities need to provide such services? Like drinking water, transportation. These services are provided by the municipality, and ICT services need to be thought of in the same way. The question says, do you agree? Because you're an engineer. Are you asking that to me? Yes, well, it's not my field of expertise. So this question is, should cities regard providing ICT infrastructure as being as essential as providing public transit, drinking water, sanitation services, and roads? Well, there is a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of the municipalities. Municipalities are responsible of everything, all the services listed in this question. I don't know actually. Well, looking at local administrators, I don't think a single mayor could be knowledgeable enough in all these fields and manage everything. But we could maybe change this question and ask if the municipalities should be responsible of cultural assets. Well, I don't know why currently it's the municipality that is responsible of the cultural assets. Why is the municipality responsible of an historic mountain? Even the restoration has to be done by the municipality. I don't understand why. This needs to change. Maybe I can respond to this. By the way, in Istanbul, we have 35,000 cultural assets. I learned it on your website. It's more than 30,000. And do you have the figure? I don't know if you have the figure for all the cultural assets in Turkey. We have about maybe 300,000 assets, but there is no indication, public indication about this. You can't find this information anywhere in an accessible way. This is very important, I believe. So digital maps need to be prepared. I'm not talking about academic purposes, but I'm talking about maps for the use of end users. Yes, Cengiz and Ozan, there is a question for you. Why do you prefer refraining from talking about politics? Isn't this also a kind of political stand? That's the question. Maybe you can answer. On social media, there are so many false or fake news or content. There are some false news that spread immediately about urbanization as well. What should be the attitude against these? What could be done? Maybe Ozan and Cengiz can answer this. Well, we need to say that, well, I prefer avoiding politics, but we are political beings. I do have a political view. Cengiz has a political view. We are very comfortable about that. There is no issue. But I don't think we should put this ahead of our academic work. People we invite to our program might have a different political view than us. Maybe the only criteria would be that people's freedoms, but people shouldn't have any views or opinions that would restrict other people's views. I think that's the main challenge we have in Turkey anyway. We keep talking about these issues with Cengiz, so I say we think. In Turkey, politics is a very determining factor. It impacts literature, architecture, and all of these things are providing, so to say, ammunition for politics. You use your literature information, historic information, architectural information. But I'm talking about everyday politics. I'm not talking about theory of politics, because we do talk about theory of politics in our programs. But I'm talking about everyday politics. Not creating ammunition for everyday politics is important. Otherwise, it would devalue your information in the field of history, literature, architecture, etc. So, yes, we don't talk about everyday politics. We avoid doing that. But we do, of course, have our own political views. You have your own politics, you mean? Yes, we do. I mean, the things we talk about. Let's say we have an agenda that we follow. I also said in the beginning, we do have our agenda, but we don't want to use it as an instrument for the temporary everyday agenda. Yes, thank you. Seda, the ICT infrastructure question and this fake news. Can you also say something about it? And then I'll turn to Hatice. Should municipalities be responsible of everything? Should they respond to every question? What should be the communication policy? Maybe you could answer that question. And Mr. Cengiz, there is a point when people say, I checked the tweets, it's not there. I checked the study, it's not there. Time allocated for Twitter, time allocated for work. How do you strike the balance? Maybe you can also respond to this as well as the fake news, false news question. Just 1 or 2 minutes, please. Let me respond to the responsibilities of municipalities. Of course, historic monuments are the responsibility of different institutions. Of course, the Ministry of Culture and Board of Monuments is responsible of everything, but the municipalities have a different role. Now we find housing through Airbnb, for instance. Before we would go abroad, buy guides, package tours, but people are traveling individually now. There is this concept of individual traveler now. So people can reach out to you for things that makes nonsense somehow. We have their phone, and I mean, even when you across the borders of a district, the municipality can send you a message. I don't know if you're aware of that. If you have contacted the municipality for any transaction, they have your phone number, and our phone numbers are available in all municipalities. So they immediately send an SMS to you, and they use it to announce, for instance, a TV program that the mayor will go on that evening. But they don't use this power to share any information about the districts, maps, historic things. No, they just send you SMS messages to celebrate religious days, for instance. But I think this has no value. Sometimes tourists come and they ask you, even the port is not mapped correctly, for instance, so the tourists ask you and you have to tell them. And the general director of foundations, he is very responsive, so I sometimes exchange messages with him. Sometimes I post things on social media, so we are trying to make the process about the foundation's inventory faster. We are trying to encourage municipalities as well. We need to ask for these rights, and things will change. Yes, Hatice, should the municipalities respond to all comments?
Actually, I do not wish to give you a very clear-cut answer to this question, because just like people, every corporation, every organization has a style, a certain culture, a certain character, because I believe that social media is something that gives a lot of opportunity for that. Of course, about the city, if people have problems or if there are things that they are curious about, of course, these must be answered. Nothing should go unanswered, but things that are not reasonable or functional, I think they shouldn't answer them. They shouldn't tweet back or answer back. So, what would you say? Time for work, time for Twitter. How do you manage it? Well, I run my own business. My current business is a family company, so I am in a privileged position. I also like what I do, and if you like what you do, you can devote time to it. It's all about curiosity. And of course, I always need to read new things. There is always something that I need to prepare. And that makes you very disciplined. So I can do it all at the same time, juggle everything together, and I recommend it to all. Share what you know, because people receive it. And I thank you for your invitation also. And Cemil Bey, Secretary General in particular, thank you so much. Likewise, thank you. We have gone beyond our allocated time. But nevertheless, thank you for your attention. Hopefully we'll meet again in the next session. Thank you, goodbye.
İyi geçtiğini umuyoruz.